Some people say high holidays, but really they're the high holy days. It's actually a trajectory that began this year in July with Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th day of the month of Av. That is a day of commemorating a whole series of communal tragedies that have befallen the Jewish people, beginning with the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians in the year 586 before the Common Era. Then it was the destruction of the second temple by the Romans in the year 70 of the Common Era. And then it was a whole series of things after that, the expulsion from Spain, the expulsion from Portugal. Even the Nazis used that date to liquidate the Warsaw Ghetto. So it's a well-known date in the Jewish calendar as being the absolute darkest, most terrible day. And then after that date, we start on the calendar moving up. And then when we move to the next month, the month of Elul, that's the month of waking ourselves up. That's the month when we blow the shofar every morning and we're engaged in this process of tshuva, of turning or returning ourselves. This is all in preparation for getting to the month of Tishrei. The first day of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah, Rosh's head. So it's the head of the year, the beginning of the year, the turn of the year. And we begin with that. And then 10 days later, we have Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Or if you like to play with the English, you can think of it as the Day of Atonement. And that's a period that we call the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe and trembling. As soon as we finish Yom Kippur, we begin building our Sukkot for the holiday of Sukkot that follows after that. And that's an 8-day holiday, a kind of a harvest festival of Thanksgiving. So it's this enormous trajectory of the calendar.
It really seems to tell a big story of Judaism or the history of Jews.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that there is a story about Jewish history, but there's also a really profound personal story, because the idea of tshuva, of turning or returning, is returning to your aspirational best self. So it's a big time. It's a whole month of introspection, of really thinking about, where did I go wrong last year? What were the mistakes I've made? What do I not want to repeat? How do I want to go forward into this new year and therefore into the next part of my life? Who do I want to be? How do I want to behave? So we don't make resolutions in the way that you would with a secular New Year. But we make resolutions about we do something called Heshbon HaNefesh, an accounting of our souls. And that entire month is spent working towards getting to Rosh Hashanah, saying, okay, today's the birthday of the world. We get to start all over again. We get to really be in the fullness of who we want to be. And then between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that 10 days of awe, that 10 days of trembling, it's like, it's not too late to turn and return. It's never too late, but it's more urgent now. We're thinking about it harder. And then on Yom Kippur, it's so communal. It is the most, for me anyway, the most beautiful and uplifting sight in normal years. When you see Jews who you didn't even know they were Jewish, maybe in your neighborhood, and you see people coming out and going into the synagogue to spend a 25-hour period, usually the hottest day of the year, it feels like always, but to spend 25 hours of no food, no water, just completely focusing on our spiritual selves. And it's, the rabbis of the ancient world said it was the happiest day of the year. It was not, there was nothing sad about Yom Kippur, because it's the day when you become in alignment and your true spiritual self has the ability to come to the fore.
Sitting with you today will be really nice, just to get a better understanding of some of these high holy days.
Yeah,
and to see what my neighbors are, you know, what they're, I don't know if it's celebrating or honoring, I guess maybe a better word.
It's a bit of both, and it's even more than that. It's really quite solemn in the sense we have a prayer called the Unatana Tokef, and it's really, literally, it says who will live and who will die. And it lists all the ways that who knows what the coming year holds, right? So it's this moment of completely tapping into the mystery and the unknown, the unknowingness and the unknowableness, and acknowledging our lack of control. We love to think that we're all in control of our lives, but we say, who will die by fire, who by water, who by wild beast, who by... And, people sometimes go through this litany of things like, oh, that could never happen. But then you see, like, there's a fire, there's a flood, there's an attack by an animal. And you realize that, yeah, okay, these are in the words of the ancient world. But the reality in our world, we are just as insecure and just as out of control and just as vulnerable as people have always been, in spite of our illusions of security that we have homes and cars and, medical technology and long range missiles. And we have this and we have that, but ultimately we are completely vulnerable. And so a large part of this holiday period is about just opening our hearts to our own vulnerability and really just being in that vulnerability as a community. Another really interesting piece is that all of the prayers, we do make confessions on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atoning, when we confess all of our sins, but we do it publicly and we do it in the third person plural. So we have done this, we have done that, we have done that. And so you might say, well, that doesn't make any sense because maybe you personally didn't steal, maybe you personally didn't commit violence. But the perspective, the liturgical perspective is that how do you know what you didn't prevent? How do you know what you contributed to? So in that sense, you may not be guilty, but you're responsible.
I love that. And yeah, and you're not calling yourself or anyone out.
No, it's the entire community.
Yeah, I really love that you do that. In my world we called ourselves out, but we did it pretty much privately.
Well, there's something to be said, isn't there, for calling ourselves out as a human species. Look at the things that we have done as human beings. Look at the violations and the things that we've done to our planet and to one another and to just by turning away when people are in need. So we acknowledge that. And when we're done acknowledging all of that, we say, okay, we have the opportunity to start again, to try to be better and with a little more consciousness. So it's not that we think we're all beyond redemption or anything like that. We think that we need to hold ourselves accountable in order to do better.